Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic? Let's do it. Teachers of Reddit, what was your I don't get paid enough for this shit moment? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Being stabbed with scissors by a 4-year-old. We had told the head teacher for a long time that this kid had issues and needed serious psychiatric help. He had a horrific background, which should have put him on the radar anyway. The head teacher said he simply needed breathing exercises and mindful techniques. I shit you not. We ended up having to photograph each other's injuries every day. Blame was put on us. We weren't dealing with him appropriately, etc. Eventually, during one of his moments, which happened daily, we called the head teacher. When she got there, we emptied all the other kids outside and left her to it. She insisted she could deal by herself. That afternoon, the child psychologists were called by the head. We took 8 months worth of daily assaults. She couldn't do 8 minutes. I teach high school math, and as many teachers do, have cafeteria duty periodically. I had a kid fail pretty badly in my 4th period right after lunch that hadn't come to class in 2 weeks. It wasn't too surprising. A low SES school, students had home issues and really didn't care much for school as a whole. I had called home multiple times before and got no response, so I stopped about midway through quarter 3 when I realized and informed the parents via voicemail that he had no shot of earning credit for the year with how badly he failed the first semester, 21%. In the last week of school, I saw him come into the cafeteria for the first time that quarter, hang out with his friends, play basketball, then leave towards the classrooms with everyone else. He took what I thought was the long route to my class, and after 10 minutes of not being in class, I realized he wasn't going to make it. I marked him absent and went on with my day. His mom finally returned my calls later that day to assert that her child went to school today and therefore should be passing. I had to take a deep breath before telling her that there are students who come to class every day and still aren't passing. One day is just not enough. Further, he came into the building for lunch and played basketball and left before 4th period started. She didn't like that very much and called the principal. The principal ended up backing me up, but it went on all summer as the superintendent had to get involved. All the while that she was fighting my grade, said student hadn't attended a single day of summer school class. I taught the summer school class, and he failed that too. I got paid $11 an hour to teach piano. This was in 2007. This is unbearably low for the random hours you're given, the impossibility of working full-time, and having to do tons of lesson prep outside of teaching. I had a mother who would put her ear up against the door of the room for the whole lesson. The second time I would show an example, if I said, "Try positioning your hand like this," and I'd play the line from the piece, the mom would open the door and say, "This is my daughter's lesson. I want to hear less of you playing, thanks." And she would just effing stand there. There was a secretary in the waiting room who I mentioned this to, and she said, "She's paying for the lesson," and sided with the mom. Also, this daughter was on the 3rd book in a beginner primer series. The mom signed her up for grade 3 conservatory exam and only told me after the refund period was up. She says, "Well, my daughter is taking this exam," and I tried to make the comparison, like a kid doing beginner class 3 of swimming and taking a 3rd year diving exam or something. It just made 0 sense, and I don't know where she even found the information. After that was stressful, and the pay? Not worth it. I was wondering how long it would take before these stories became more about the parents than the students, and it took exactly 1 story. So, I teach at an inner city for at-risk youth. We are basically the final stop before the student goes to prison. I love my job. I love teaching high school, and a lot of the kids are so unique and interesting. But some shit I do not get paid enough to deal with. Myself and 3 others had to restrain a kid for 20 minutes while waiting for the police to arrive. In those 20 minutes, all of us were bitten at least twice, and that was really effing scary. Most teens know that biting is a really pussycat move to pull, especially the street kids. Actually called him out on a later date when he tried to tell other kids that we were forcing it on him, basically saying we were too rough. and that he was a total badass. I mentioned to the class that he resorted to biting people, and that shut him right up. I've had entire desks thrown at my head. I've had to restrain kids who have 100 pounds on me while also being punched by the other kid involved in a fight. Again, I love my job and the people I work with, but some days just feel like the perfect storm of bullshit that gets me wanting to just walk out the front doors and drive away. I'm a music teacher who got forced into being in the classroom teacher for primary French immersion because I have a French qualification but haven't used it in years. Also, I was forced to teach distance learning when the rest of my school was in person. I still had to be at my school though, so they put me in an unheated, windowless office and shifted my schedule to not line up with the breaks at my school. I didn't even get students from my own school. This has resulted in me teaching all subjects by myself, half of which are supposed to be delivered in French, to a bunch of black boxes on a screen in an unheated office, and I couldn't even interact with my colleagues at break times. I've never taught most of these subjects before, because I specialized in 2 subjects with the intention of being a rotary teacher for those subjects. So planning takes my entire evening, every evening, to make sure I'm ready for the next day. I've not been very successful at delivering the subjects that are meant to be taught in French. I feel like I've let everyone down. I'm exhausted all the time. There are 3 weeks left, and I'm just so over it. I'm an elementary teacher, and this didn't happen to me, but to a colleague. There was a 3rd grade boy who had severe emotional issues and would shit himself constantly to avoid work. The staff for the behavior unit he was in would often take him to the clinic bathroom, clean him up, and dress him in new clothes. The kid did not have any intellectual or physical impairments that would make it appropriate to receive this kind of help. It took a new person being hired in one of the leadership roles within the unit to put the hammer down and call his mom every time he shit himself. He told everyone to let the kid stay in his own filth until his mom came to handle it. It's unreal how anyone felt like wiping an effing 9-year-old was within their pay range. I used to be a middle school teacher, male, and only made it for 3 years. I had a female student who was a bit socially awkward, but overall was a nice kid. One day after class, I was pushing in chairs and noticed a bunch of red on a chair. I thought nothing of it and wiped it up with some Clorox wipes. It happened again a few days later. When I put the pieces together, I scheduled a parent-teacher conference with the mom and the nurse. Mom said she didn't like wearing pads and wasn't going to force her daughter to do so. Needless to say, it happened a few more times, and one of the male students caught on. He was cool about it and kept it under wraps, but I was done with that shit. The other female teachers got involved and worked with the student to make her understand the importance of feminine hygiene, and it seemed to stick. Used to teach primary school, now teach university and private language courses. Since my primary school days, I have had to deal with some parents, entitled parents are the worst. From university, I've had some students who never come to lessons, don't listen to my advice, and are still surprised that they get bad grades. Not only that, the student tried to argue with me about plagiarism when I had proof that he plagiarized his paper. 99% plagiarized on Turnitin. And then, for his final research report, he got a very low grade because it was completely incomprehensible. He claimed that it was because he had COVID. He used this excuse during 3 separate well-distanced moments during the year. From private students, I was teaching a company course with some businessmen. Most of them were fine, but one of them literally spent half the class arguing with me that he stands up in the morning when he meant to say get up. I had to explain the difference, and all the while he argued with me. He then blatantly refused to speak English. It was an English lesson, saying nasty things about me in German, which I speak fluently, but he didn't know that. Most of the time my job is great, but sometimes it can be really frustrating. Not necessarily a teacher, but I did some tutoring work last year and went to a family friend's house because the parents asked me to tutor their 16-year-old son. I was 17. Now, I've never met this guy before, but I know he's really big into video games, so obviously as soon as I come in, he's on his computer playing League of Legends. He was clearly in a ranked game because when his mom came to tell him to turn it off, he started screaming at her and telling her he would be finished soon. The mom apologizes to me and goes and turns off the computer. He, and I kid you not, pushes her away and starts screaming at her. She's quite shocked, so I'm guessing he's never done that before. But he kept screaming at her until I stupidly decided to butt in, bad idea, and tell him not to treat his mother like that. It was none of my business, but I couldn't help it. Next thing you know, his fist is coming right for my face. I fall and hit my head on the bed frame, so now my head is bleeding. He stormed off to the bathroom, after which his mother ran up to me and started apologizing and offering me money, which I gladly took because I needed money. Needless to say, I never tutored that boy. Preschool teacher. We have an after-school program that some of my students attended. After class, we got a frantic call on the walkie-talkie from one of their teachers, frantically asking for help in one of the bathrooms. I responded and found one of the students standing in the middle of the bathroom, pants around his ankle, and poop all over his stall and himself, as he had kind of spread it around. I ended up cleaning him up while his teacher cleaned the bathroom. It was quite a mess, and he kept trying to run out of the bathroom half naked. Kid was dealing with a fair bit of trauma, so I was glad that I was there to help him out, as he knew me and felt more comfortable, but it was intense. There's usually at least 1 or 2 major poop incidents every year where someone completely shits their pull-up or gets sick and has diarrhea everywhere, but that was the first time I had a kid smear poop on the wall. Mine was the culmination of events. Being asked by admin, what can we do to help him pass? This was not a question. It was, how are you going to pass him? I created a course from scratch, only to be told after teaching it for 3 years that it was being discontinued so I could teach something else they needed. I made sure everyone knew my wife was pregnant, and I mean everyone. I was told I must have a doctor's note or face reprimand. The constant expectation is that my test scores must improve. This is a double-edged sword. Your first year of teaching is your baseline, so if those kids score well, then they expect next year's kids to score even better. After you actually know what to teach and how to teach it, the ability improves, gets harder and harder. Being asked by parents or volunteer coaches to give students a passing grade so they can play this weekend. We had a lot of nepotism, where if you belong in a certain group, you got privileges. Thankfully, I'm in an awesome school now that has a principal who just got out of the classroom 2 years ago, so she's really easy to approach. Honestly, it was not that bad at the school I was talking about, but this new school is just so much better. Not a teacher, but a member of what was known as support staff at a private boarding school. A job description that guaranteed we got more flack from parents than the teachers ever did. The final straw was when I got a phone call from a parent announcing herself as pupil's name's Mummy. The kid was 14, who was complaining that her son's fitted bottom sheet had been lost in the school laundry. I explained that parents were all told not to send sheets in because the school provided them, that the sheet this mother had sent in was exactly the same color as the school sheets, and that I simply did not have time to go through every fitted sheet in the laundry looking for one with her son's name on it in 3mm font. This lady literally screamed down the phone at me that she had paid her fees and did not care if I had to go through 450 sheets in order to find her son's. And that was the moment where I officially burned out of a career I had worked in for 16 years. No money in the world is worth being left open to verbal abuse from self-entitled people like that. This entire year I had a dad yell at me because I taught my Gov class that Trump was impeached. This was before the second one. That whole meeting was a shit show. Another pair of parents went to this board to complain that my assistant was being mean to their daughter. She wasn't. So many students refused to wear masks and the admin didn't care. One of the administrators was clear about being anti-mask in public and on social media. Most of the boys in my class were enamored by the smooth stylings of Ben Shapiro. I had a student who did nothing all year. We tried everything to get her to work. I contacted her mom several times about it over the year. School ended last week, and mom wants to know why her child failed everything. Finally, a student told her parents that I tried to kill her by placing saran wrap on top of her head. Her parents called the police, who came to the school to interview me and other witnesses. Well, as long as you teach your class objectively and fairly, there shouldn't be an issue. I mean, right? Doesn't matter what you talk about, it does have something to do with the government, just like any other impeachments before with Nixon or Clinton or Jackson or anyone. I'm sure he taught all of those, right? My husband, a world studies teacher, put something on Facebook about the election. This is private. He told people he could trust someone took a screenshot of it, which quickly got passed around to ultra-conservative groups, a Trump train group, and a local conservative talk radio show. Overnight, it blew up, and people from literally everywhere sent messages and called his administration and superintendent, calling for him to be fired. Then the lies about him started, that he was indoctrinating students, and the local radio show even compared him to a pea on air. He received death threats. Our address and his phone number were put publicly on Facebook. It was an absolute nightmare. His administration put him on leave so they can conduct an investigation, which only fueled their rumors and anger. The investigation completely cleared his name. We hired a lawyer, and he separated from the district. He now teaches online at a private school. Even still, rumors will pop up about him on Facebook. And just a few weeks ago, our state's lieutenant governor announced an indoctrination task force that is investigating teachers supposedly indoctrinating kids with liberal ideas. It's a bad time to be a teacher. In my first job in South Korea, I had a student who acted up in every class and made it impossible to teach. New monthly term, and one of my students came up and said it was his dream to go to MIT. Okay, I'm going to do everything I can to make this class sing for you. But the problem, student, messed it up every day. Okay, so background. If the kids don't do their homework, you can make them go to their homework room to be guided through their homework by a teacher. I've never sent this kid there because he'd just ruin it for the teacher, who's usually guiding several kids at once through homework. I'm the only teacher who's managed to get through a term without kicking him out of the homework room every day. I set up this great lesson that I knew the class clown would ruin, so I assigned homework I knew he wouldn't do. I usually don't assign homework. My homework is optional because it's cram school, and these kids are already at school all day and have to do their normal homework. So it is known that my kids don't go to the homework room. Only today, it is. I've created a whole class of science and tech English vocabulary that will be useful to my MIT dreamer. I have a whole little booklet of Latin and Greek roots and the role in scientific nomenclature. All I need is one class, just one class to guide my students so they have this resource. So at the beginning of class, I ask for homework. The class clown doesn't have it. Okay. HW room. No hard feelings. I get why people don't want to be in the cram school, but I have this student who desperately wants to learn, and you're ruining it for him. And I need you to get out of my way for one day. The class clown does not want to go. I don't realize it, but I may have created something because I'm the only teacher who hasn't sent him to the homework room. This is an unprecedented level of not wanting to go to the homework room, but I have 45 minutes, so I grab the kid's stuff and start walking it over to the homework room. The kid slams me against the wall, violently. I slam my head into the wall twice. The first slam was loud enough to draw teachers into the room. They watched him slam my head into the wall. I was so in shock that at 25 years old, I kinda laughed and pushed him off like, "Get him out of here," and carried on through my lesson in complete silence because the students were also shocked. For 10 minutes at least, because that's how long they could handle him in the homework room. They sent a student who had just assaulted his teacher back in the room after 10 minutes. I did not know what to do but tried to teach. He ruined the class, and by the end of the month, I illegally skipped out on my year-long contract and escaped to Cambodia without giving them back my airplane ticket or housing fees, as was the policy for any teachers that didn't finish the contract. There was a lot of other stuff at this job. I didn't get a lot of things my contract promised. I worked illegally my first month because my visa had not gone through, but they didn't inform us. They locked the foreign teachers in the basement when tax inspectors came because they said only 3 foreign teachers worked there. I heard they planned drugs in teachers' apartments to get them deported, which is why I simply cut my contract short instead of attempting to deal with them. EWHA Academy in Daegu, South Korea, if interested.